introducing you to statistics. So let's follow along here. Blank is the branch of mathematics concerned with the collection and analysis of numerical data. Well, you guessed it. That is statistics. One way to collect data is through the use of a survey that asks participants to provide data. The responses will allow the data collector to answer a bigger statistical question. This type of question will allow for many and a variety of responses. We'll talk more about that. The opposite, if a question only creates one piece of data, it is not a statistical question. Okay, so let's look at some examples. Let's consider the question, how many students in this room are buying lunch today? So, assuming that we're in a room of lots of students here, we could imagine that maybe 12 students in this room are buying lunch today. That is possibly the answer to that question. Now, if we wanted to ask the question, how many students in each homeroom are buying lunch today? Well, we could assume that there's some homeroom that's buying 12 lunches, but then there's another homeroom that's only buying 8, and maybe one that's buying 14, and if we just stick with 5 classrooms, there could be like a room that's only buying 7, and maybe another that's buying 10. So here we had many answers because we had to answer this for each homeroom. So using our definition from above, is this question statistical? No. There's one piece of data that's created. Is this question statistical? Yes, it created multiple pieces of data. So again, the key difference, this created one number or piece of data. This question created multiple numbers or pieces of data. So that's really the essence of a statistical question versus a non-statistical question. Some other things that we're going to need to know about in this unit are things that are measures of central tendency. So anything that's a measure of central tendency is trying to describe the middle or center of the data values. So if we want to talk about the number that occurs most often in a data set, that is the mode. Occurs most often mode. It is a way of describing the center. The sum of all data values divided by the number of data values, that is the mean. And yes, in other settings, it is referred to as the average, but we are going to be using the word mean. It is the more official mathematical term that we're going to stick with. The middle value of a set of data, when the data values are written in order, that is the median. So those all are different ways that we would be describing the center. Okay, now we also sometimes want to describe something called variability. And the variability is how much, it is the numbers that describe how much data values differ from each other. So the most basic is the difference between the greatest value and the least value of a data set, and we call that the range. We'll talk about this more as we go along, but the range is a singular number. Sometimes people will talk about ranges. Oh, the range is from 10 to 12. Well, if the numbers went from 10 to 12, the range would be 2. It's not two numbers, it is one number that is the difference between the greatest and least value. The next measure of variability is the average distance between each data value and the mean. This we're going to be coming to a little bit later in the unit, but this is called the mean absolute deviation. It is often abbreviated MAD. Not that it's upset, but it is the MAD. All right, the range of the middle 50% of the data values. Again, this will be coming in a whole later lesson dedicated to it. This is called the inner quartile range. We also do use its initials, sometimes to refer to it, the IQR. Terrific. All right, so what we're going to do next is look at a few examples of questions and try to determine whether they are statistical or non-statistical. So I'll leave some of these for you to work on on your own, but let's just look at one or two of these together. So the first question says, how many hours of sleep did you get last night? So if you think about that and you're like, oh, I got 7 hours last night. Well, that created, I shouldn't write 7 there. That created one number. Since that's one number, that is non-statistical. How many TVs are in each of my classmates' homes? Well, I have to answer this for each of my classmates. So you might be already noticing that each is one way that we might be creating multiple data points. We might go through and say, oh, somebody has 3 TVs in their home, somebody has 5 TVs, somebody has 2 TVs. So we're getting multiple data points, so this is statistical. Okay. We also might be given a question that is non-statistical and asked how can we rewrite it as a statistical question. And there could be a couple of ways to go about doing this. So if we ask, how many cards did you get for your birthday? Well, as it's written, it's not statistical. So we could say, how many cards did each kid in class get for his or her birthday? That would be a way that we could turn the question to create multiple different data points, and therefore making it a statistical question. For the ones down here at the bottom, we are asked to determine if it's statistical or not, and then explain. So basically, you're really trying to answer that question. Does it create one data point or multiple? Thanks all, and we will go further into statistics next time.